If you're looking to build and scale a real estate portfolio in 2025, then you want to avoid buying these types of properties at all costs. In fact, unfortunately, a lot of novice investors and first timers go into these types of properties and end up having to wait years upon years upon years for these properties to grow enough in value where they can eventually either sell the property and take a profit or be able to refinance their property, pull out the equity and go and buy something else. I've been able to build a high 8-figure real estate portfolio and deliver over $170 million of real estate assets in the last 10 years. And I wouldn't have been able to do all of that if I had have purchased these types of properties from the very beginning. So what are these types of properties that I'm talking about? Well, I'm referring to house and land packages. So what is a house and land package? Well, it's exactly what it is in the name. It's a house that is sold with a piece of land that you can then go and build as a real estate investor. Now, the problem here is that these types of properties are not good investment properties. They're great for owner-occupiers. They're great for first home buyers. They might be great for immigrants that have come to the country in the last few years and are looking to take that first step into property ownership. But generally speaking, they make poor investments, and I'm going to show you why. So what happens is, and how a house and land package comes to be, is a developer will typically go in, buy some paddocks, and go through the process of carving up those paddocks into multiple lots. The reason this happens is because often at the state government level, when they feel like there is more demand for housing and there's a housing shortage, they'll often push the urban growth boundary out and then make available land for subdivision purposes. That's when the developers swoop in, they acquire the lands and the paddocks, and then they go in and they put together these large land estates and go through the process of putting in all the roads and the services and the street lights and ultimately, sell off these land lots. We've all seen these before, and the problem is the land deals themselves. They take years and years and years to establish themselves into actual markets. The developers, they're very good at constraining supply, and what that does is keep prices steadily growing over a period of time, but not enough often to recover the entry price for a long period of time. What we see is these developers go in and they release stages. So it's very common to see multiple stages that are spread out over years and years and years, sometimes decades, right? And so what that means is that the developer won't then release more land lots until each stage is subscribed. That then allows them to keep pricing stable. And they're all looking at each other's land estates as well. So all of the developers are making sure that they're pricing their land lots competitively, that they're not releasing too much supply to the market and oversaturating the market, because that would then have a poor impact on pricing. And so it's all very manipulated. And that's where we get to this sort of manipulated price versus a market price. And this is the main reason why we want to stay away from house and land packages as investors, because what I mean by that is when a developer goes and puts together a large land estate like this, they'll be looking at it and saying, right, okay, so what is it going to cost me per square meter to buy the vacant land, to take it through the planning process, to then go and put in all the civil infrastructure, all the stormwater pipes, all the sewer pipes, the water mains, put in all the roads and the services and all the street lights and everything. And so they'll have all these line items in their feasibility, which all cost money. And then at the end of it, they'll look at it and say, okay, well, what's it going to cost me to market these land lots? And what's it ultimately going to cost me as a delivery? And then I need to factor in what my profit margin should be on top of that. And that's where this pricing gets determined. Not only that, now you've got the land and you've paid a manipulated price for that land. Now you've got to look at building on the land. They look at that and they say, right, I've got to reach out to the roof tilers, the windows and the door suppliers, the flooring contractors. I've got to supply all the bricks and get the bricklayers to come in. Like, there's so many elements to a house build, and all of those subcontractors are effectively charging for the supply of those materials and the installation of them, plus their margin. Then the builder looks at all of that and says, right, okay, so the raw cost for me to deliver this home is X. I need to make a margin on top of that as well, because I've got an office that I've got to support, I've got overheads, and I also have to take home some profit as well. So they then say, okay, well, you can buy this house package for X amount of dollars. But that is also a manipulated price. Not to mention, we also have the marketeers that step into these sorts of products, and then they sell them on behalf of the builders and the developers. And they charge, $30, sometimes $40, sometimes $50,000 on top of the price of the house and land itself. And so you as an investor walk in and end up paying this manipulated price, which ultimately is going to take years and years and years for that thing to grow enough in value where it's actually caught up to a market determined price. Now, what is a market determined price? Well, this is typically where we see an established estate or an established suburb where the homes have been there for a long time, but more importantly, there's enough buyers in that market that are there ready to buy into that market because of the amenity, because of the schools, because of the hospitals, because of the shopping centres, because of all of these other facets that are attracting them to that location. And that creates a floor price in the market. And ultimately, the more buyers there are than sellers, ultimately pushes up price. But the adverse is happening in the house and land market because there aren't enough buyers to meet the supply. And so the supply is restricted and only drip fed onto the market to maintain that pricing. But ultimately, we know there's a lot of supply that is coming because all of these other stages, all of these other land estates haven't yet been brought to market. And so how on earth can we expect that our properties are going to be growing enough in value to make it a worthwhile investment? And so ultimately, we have to then sit there for years and years and years while these markets establish themselves. What's worse is that all of the land lots are often brought to market first, and then the retail and the public infrastructure, the schools, the hospitals, the shopping centres, the public transport systems. These are all often brought in last when the housing lots are already there. And it's those things that really make a community whole and establish a market in itself, which is typically where we then start to see growth. And so you've got to be very, very careful of these things. You don't want to be overpaying for the end product if you don't have to be. You're paying effectively for all of the costs plus the developer's profit, plus the volume builder's profit, and in some cases also marketing costs on top of that. As I mentioned, these things can take years and years and years for themselves to establish enough value that you've then got a decent amount of equity sitting in that home to then either refinance and draw out to buy another property or to be able to sell for a profit. Now, this isn't something that you can then just take back to the market in 3 to 5 to 7 years, because all of a sudden you're now competing with all of the other developers and builders that are offering new product. Now let me ask you the question, why would someone buy your 7-year-old home, which is a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car, when they could literally walk 400 meters down the same street to the display center and go and buy a brand new dwelling that they only have to wait 9 months for, basically the same cost or cheaper? Like, why is it that they would spend more on an older home when they could go and buy brand new? And that's what a lot of people want in this market, is they want the brand new. They don't want a home that's been lived in, and they certainly don't want to be paying a premium for it if they don't have to. And so, as I mentioned, the supply of land is controlled and constrained, and it can become very hard to resell because you're now competing with the market. So it can take a long time for you to be able to even exit out of that investment. And that is the thing that keeps a lot of investors stuck and constrained in the one spot. Now, it'd be rude of me not to mention the positives to buying a house and land package for you to properly consider. And one of those is in fact that you are buying brand new. But as an investor, we have to be able to detach ourselves from the emotional aspect of buying a property. We don't want to be thinking about the fact that we want something brand new because a tenant's going to live in it anyway. We're not going to see the benefit of buying brand new as an investor. We would much prefer to be buying in established markets, in something that might be 40, 50, 60 years old, that's got value add potential, that's got a larger land lot, that's got future development potential. Like, those are all the things that are going to push prices up over time, and you'll see much quicker growth in that market when you buy an established home. There are lots of purchaser incentives that come with these types of opportunities as well. And so developers and the builders, they love to throw in furniture packages and landscaping packages and all sorts of bells and whistles to tempt you to come and buy a house and land package. But you've really got to be able to put all that to the side and say, look, in terms of the long-term approach here, I'm not prepared to compromise on the short term for that gain if it's going to cost me in the long run. So make sure that you keep your emotions at home. Don't bring those to the investment table. You've got to be able to look at things pragmatically and look at them through a very clear black and white lens. And then look, yes, there is the benefit to owning your own patch of dirt compared to, say, investing in an apartment or a townhouse where you don't necessarily have that land component. As we know, land appreciates while buildings depreciate. So what would you want to own more of? Land, of course. However, a lot of the land estates these days, the lot sizes are shrinking each and every year that passes by. And so often when you do buy a house and land package, yes, you are getting a piece of land content. However, it's already maximized to its full degree. And so what that means is that it's going to take decades for those markets to become so established that the development or the highest and best use is going to become greater than what's being put on the land in today's time frame. So the negatives certainly outweigh the positives. Stay away from house and land packages if you want to build and scale a real estate portfolio, certainly in the next 5 years, because these things will take a lot longer than that to establish their own floor price and base value before they start growing anyway. I hope that helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. I'm constantly releasing other videos which will help point you in the right direction with your own investing journey. I'll see you on the next one.